First of all, thank you all for being here. We certainly appreciate you coming out on this chilly fall evening, but I think you're going to be very delighted with what you hear from these wonderful ladies who've come out to roast and toast our Miss Margaret Maron.
Yes, we're a little apprehensive about this.
Oh, it's going to be fun. It's going to be painless. It's going to be painless.
Oh, no, I've heard. I know how you can spin things, Alice.
Well, my name is Alice Sharp, and I am very proud to be the development officer at Durham County Library and to be associated with a wonderful team that have helped to put this on today. And I'd like to introduce you to some of the library staff. First off, we have Terry Hill. Terry, would you wave or stand up back there? He is our new deputy director. And next to him, we have Jill Waggy, who is in charge of our IT department at the library. And then next to her is Dion Greenlee, fairly new, who is our grant writer. So please welcome, and liaison to the Friends. And on the camera, we are very happy to have Matt Clobridge, who has joined us as the marketing and development IT person. And Matt is going to make it possible to continue that tradition of having wonderful videos of our programming on the website. And of course, I cannot forget my boss, Gina Rozier, who is here, who is the marketing and development manager. And there's one person left, but I'm going to come back to her in a moment. First of all, I want to offer so much thanks to this cadre of writers who have come out today. This is our very last day of Durham Reads Together, and this is quite a momentous occasion for us. I also want to thank the Washington Duke Inn for their graciousness in being a co-sponsor of this event. Some of you may not know this, but we're not at the Washington Duke all the time for our library programs. So definitely our hats off to them for being a part of this great Durham Reads Together. And Joanne is sitting there looking so apprehensive. And in addition to the Washington Duke, I want to thank a cadre of volunteers. You've seen some of them at the tables outside. These come from our Humanities Society, and I'll talk about them in a moment, but I want to thank those volunteers. And I want to thank Patricia, DJ Pitty Pat to many, for offering her services gratis for this occasion. She just felt it so important that if we were going to be here not only with the great company and the great food and beverage, that we also have great music. So thank you, DJ. I also would like to take a minute to introduce a few of what we call the library family. We actually have 3 tentacles in the library and in our library family. And I know that we have at least one of the members of the Library Board of Trustees. Would you raise your hand? I know I saw Joyce. Okay, Joyce Sykes. Thank you, Joyce. And we also have the president of the Friends, the Durham Library, Friends of the Durham Library. And Elsa, where is Elsa? Oh, there she is, right there. And Elsa has a big weekend coming up because if you don't know, this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are the annual book sale. So that's going on, so please make it down to Maine for this wonderful event that helps our library so much in terms of what the Friends are able to provide for the library. So we want to thank them. And Jan, do we have another Friends of the Library Board member? Jan Hessling is here as well. And I don't know if we have any of them here, but this event would not be possible without the support of Durham Library Foundation. And I know Elsa has, and well, Joyce is also currently on Durham Library Foundation Board. But that the Durham Library Foundation makes possible the Humanities Program Series. And many of you, I know, support Durham Library Foundation. So if you support Durham Library Foundation, just raise your hand. You're a proud member who supports your library and the foundation, and we thank you. Without the foundation, as I said, we would not be able to have the wonderful humanities programming that we have. And this year, we have passed a milestone. Many of you are members of the Humanities Society. How many of you are members of the Humanities Society? Great. You're card-carrying members. I love that. And you may not know that this program has now surpassed having 1,000 members. That is totally amazing. Just today among you, I've heard superlatives like, oh, this is the best Durham Reads Together. You all have the best programs. This is just wonderful. And many of you did receive your new brochure, which is just chock full of just great programs that I know you're going to put on your calendar. And all of those things would not happen without the dedicated work of Joanne Abel. We have been very fortunate at Durham County Library to have had an excellent humanities program coordinator, and Joanne followed in her footsteps, and I think has taken the program to another level. So let's please give Joanne a big hand. I'm going to embarrass you. Yes, I'm going to embarrass you. And this particular Durham Reads Together is just another example of some collaboration between Joanne, I think Jill. There was a committee that talked about what would this Durham Reads Together look like? And this is a result of that collaboration. So I'm going to have Joanne come up now and tell you a little bit more about what you're going to hear this afternoon.
Thank you, Alice. Well, thank you for coming out on this cool and rainy day. I also want to thank, I personally want to thank the Durham Library Foundation for making this wonderful program possible, and also the Durham County Library, and also Novelist with Washington Duke is one of our co-sponsors. And if you, on your way, when you buy books at the end of this event, we have one of their next reads that lists a little review of all of our authors' books, and we have some for all of the programs that we've done for Durham Reads Together. I believe that it was Katie that came up with the idea of the roast and toast. Is that true?
I'm afraid so.
I thought so. Okay. Well, when Jill decided that, or suggested that we think about having Margaret Maron as our author, I was thrilled. She's been one of my favorite authors since 1992, when I first read Bootlegger's Daughter, and it immediately became one of my very favorite books. Margaret Maron was already a successful author then of another mystery series set in New York and of many, many short stories. But when Bootlegger's Daughter came out, she did something that no one has done before or since, when it won all 4 of the major mystery awards that were given to a mystery novel. It went on to become one of the 100 favorite mysteries of the century, selected by the independent mystery booksellers. Her newest book, 3-Day Town, which we have for sale in the back, won this year's Agatha for Best Novel. She herself has won many awards. She has been awarded an honorary Doctor of Letters at UNCG. She has won the Sir Walter Raleigh Award and the Order of the Longleaf Pine. Love it. She also won the highest award that can be given in the state, which is called the North Carolina Award. She's a great friend of libraries and a great promoter of reading and literacy. And we're all looking forward to her new book that will come out in November, right, The Buzzard's Table. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Margaret.
Oh, thank you. Hey, I get to go first. What would you all like to know about this panel? I beg your pardon?
You know which one's the sassy?
Yeah. The thing about being given the Order of the Longleaf Pine, which absolutely delighted me, was, and I was awarded it by our Secretary of State, Elaine Marshall, who's running for Secretary of State again in November. But one of the benefits of this is that I am entitled to offer the toast to North Carolina to every free and democratic society in the world. So I'm going to start with a toast because North Carolina has been so good to me, and I'm so in love with this state. So those of you who know it, lift a glass, metaphorically, if not, and repeat with me. Here's to the land of the longleaf pine, the summer state where the sun doth shine, where the weak grows strong and the strong grow great. Here's to down home, the old North State. Yay. Yeah. I have been very honored to be Durham's Read this month. It has been an incredible experience, and really, Joanne is an amazing person. The way she has organized this, and of course Alice and all of her helpers, and it's just been an extraordinary experience, and one that I am never going to forget, and one that I am so appreciative of, up until today. Now, and at this point, I'm going to hush. Are we starting with you, Diane? This is Diane Chamberlain.
Quick first.
And-
I want to say something really quick first.
Okay.
For those of you who don't understand what a roast and toast is, Natalie especially and Julia, a roast is when you tease someone really, really hard, but you do it because you love them. So if we start to seem really hard on your grandmother or your friend, it's only because we love her. And in the spirit of that, when the rest of us are done up here, we wanted to open up the floor not only to questions, but for those of you who would like to stand up and tell Margaret what her books and her writing have meant to you and share your own toasts. And for those of you who have known her for a long time, and no pressure, we would love to hear stories about Margaret too, if you'd like to roast her a little bit. That's all.
I'm Diane Chamberlain, and I have to say I am so impressed with the Durham Library Foundation for hosting this. This is just an incredible event, and thank you for being so good to our Margaret. I moved to North Carolina in 2005, and I moved from Northern Virginia. And people up there told me, you have got to meet Nancy Olson, who owns Quail Ridge Books, when you go down. So the first thing I did after unpacking was call Nancy and ask her if I could take her to lunch. And so we met up for lunch, and I noticed some bumper stickers on her car. And I don't remember exactly what they said, but they were along the line of left is right and abolish the death penalty and women's stuff. And I told her I really, really liked her bumper stickers, and her eyes lit up. And I learned later that she was actually vetting me to see if I would fit in with Margaret's group of writers. And I was so thrilled that I passed. And so I guess I went to a lunch first with you guys, with the whole gang. There's actually 7 of us. And I have to admit, I grew up in New Jersey. I lived in California for 12 years and Northern Virginia for 22, and I did not know who Margaret Maron was. I know. I'm being honest. So the night after the lunch, I called my younger brother, who lives in Washington State, and he's a mystery writer and a librarian. And I told him that I had lunch. I met all these new writers, and he asked who they were, and when I got to Margaret's name, he said, "The Margaret Maron?" And I realized that I was in the midst of greatness. So then I started reading mysteries. I am not funny, and so
Well,
I'm
yes,
going
you
to.
are.
Not intentionally.
If anybody's read my books, you know that I'm more likely to make you cry than laugh. If I have a character in the book who is supposed to be funny, I have to call up my funny friends and ask what this character should say. So instead of being funny, I'm going to tell you things that I've learned from Margaret. And the first thing that I learned is that the crunchy Cheetos, the little crispy ones, are better than the puffed ones. We can never have a get-together without Margaret's Cheetos. And a couple years ago, she was in a car accident, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to send her flowers. And then I thought, no, I put a couple bags of Cheetos in a big box and mailed them to her. Hopefully she enjoyed them more. What else have I learned from Margaret? I learned that Johnston County, her beloved Johnston County, is rich in culture, and that she grew up on what she calls a two-mule tobacco farm. My next book is set in 1960 in a county very much like Johnston County. So Margaret drove me all over Johnston County, and I quickly understood how much a part of that land she is and how much it means to her. And I also learned about tobacco gum getting on your fingers and everything that I needed to know for my characters. And then she read my entire manuscript for me. And I know that I'm a Jersey girl still, and I know that I didn't get everything perfect, but I got it close, and that's because of Margaret. And I also am really, really glad that you found this wonderful Brooklyn boy who learned to love the land as much as you do. He's amazing. I also learned that Paul Ryan bears a striking resemblance to Eddie Munster. Margaret posted pictures of both of them on her Facebook page, and it's really striking.
Separated at birth.
Separated at birth. And what I really learned from being the serious person that I am, what I really learned from that was that Margaret did not get upset when people criticized her for this. And some people said you should take down the nasty posts that you're getting in response to your two pictures. And Margaret said no, because she wants to give the same freedom of speech to everybody that she thinks everybody should have. And I really admired her for that, for not shying away. And Margaret never shies away from controversial topics, either in her books or in real life. And I really admire that too. So a couple years ago, I decided Margaret is my role model. And do you have a role model? It is so cool to get a role model. I think she's amazing. I realized as I'm getting older, I've been in this business a long time, and I was sort of at a plateau, and I knew all these young whippersnapper writers were coming up behind me. And I thought, okay, my career is just going to drift into the quiet sunset. And actually, things have changed radically since then, and it's not drifting. But that's how I felt at the time. And I looked at Margaret, and I thought, she handles this part of her career with such optimism and such grace. And I thought, that's really the way I want to be. And so I tend to look to her. It's a big responsibility, Margaret. I look to her for inspiration. So she's an amazing person and an amazing writer. And I just feel so lucky to have the Margaret Maron in my life.
Oh, thank you. Okay. My name is Bren Bonner-Witchker, and I have known Margaret for over a decade now. And our first meeting was at the Edgar Awards in New York, of all places.
Yeah.
We had to go there to meet, which is kind of backwards, and she invited me to join a group called Crime Writers, and Jan Hessling was in the group with us too. And so I called Margaret up, got my courage up, and called her and said, could we meet a little early, maybe for an adult beverage or something, and let me pick your brain about writing, because I was just beginning to get a few short stories published then. So she agreed to meet with me, and I was all a Twitter. I'm going to get to meet with Margaret Maron by myself. I'm going to get to pick her brain about writing. I'm going to learn all the secrets of character development and snappy dialogue and how to write about issues that matter. And so we got together, and I was sitting there just panting on the edge of my seat, and she said, well, tell me, is there any place you've ever wanted to visit And I said, well, sure, I want to go to Ireland before I die. And she said, set your book there, you can write part of it off.
It's all research. And all research is tax deductible.
So it was wonderful advice. Not what I was expecting, but it was wonderful advice. Margaret is much, much beloved in the mystery community, and there's a good reason for that. She is one of the most generous people I know, and I'm not going to get sappy here. I'm going to be mean in a minute. But she is, and she's known for her generosity to everyone. But what you may not know about her is that she is also very protective of wildlife. And I don't know if you know this about her. She owns and oversees a sanctuary on her farm. And it's for birds, and sometimes they're there with broken wings, with malformed beaks, with missing or broken legs. It's all so sad. But they're well cared for, and it is the official sanctuary for pink lawn flamingos. And they are undisturbed, and they don't allow the coyotes anywhere near, and they get to live out their little lives there in peace. So she should be awarded for this, and I'm surprised the Wildlife Foundation hasn't called already, or Sierra Club or somebody, because somebody had to do it. And another thing you may not know about Margaret is that she has an addiction. It's truly sad, but she does have an addiction. And I learned about this at Weymouth. By the way, I was hardly recognizing some of my panel mates. We call ourselves the Weymouth Seven because we go away to Weymouth to write twice a year. And usually we see one another in our pajamas, our stretched out yoga pants and t-shirts, and everybody was so dressed up today, it was amazing. But one year when we were sitting around and talking, we set goals in the morning, and we sit around sort of and talk and work through little plot kinks and things. And Margaret picked up something from the side table and started working on it. And this is her addiction.
Oh,
It's bubble wrap. We kept hearing this noise. What is this?
Get her go.
Click, click, click.
you popped them all.
I left them all for you. She cannot help herself. It's like crack. She can't help herself.
My granddaughter takes after me.
But truly, Margaret has been an inspiration to all of us. She's our mama when we go away, the seven of us together. And we look to her for guidance and her generosity of spirit and her always bringing good coffee when she comes. And, you know, offering to share her adult beverages that she brings along with her. Not the Cheetos, I might say. She hides those. But we love you, Margaret.
Yes, we
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, it's Kathy Trocheck is our mama. She's the one who cracks the whip
She's the
on
whip
her.
cracker.
Yeah.
She's not nurtured.
That's
Also
Mary
Mary Kay Andrews. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
Mary Kay Andrews. Yeah, okay.
Katie.
Well, Margaret.
Yes.
Margaret. Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me now? I wholeheartedly echo everything you guys said about Margaret, including, well, you are like my mom, Margaret. You're very much like my mom. I appreciate that, even though you're not quite old enough to be my mom. But
I think I am.
the thing about Margaret,
if I were
when
sluttish.
I'm going to get even now. When I first met Margaret, I was in awe of her because she just seemed so nice. She just seemed to never say anything bad about anyone. And then I realized that Margaret is actually the master of one of the greatest weapons the South has, and that is the bless her heart clause in conversation. It's like the Catholic confession version of conversation. It absolves you of all guilt, you know, what you're about to say. And I think I've heard Margaret say, let's see, bless her heart, she really thought she was going to win at an awards ceremony. Bless her heart, she hasn't looked like that Arthur photo in 30 years. But I think her best line, which she says about us, I'm afraid to say, is, bless her heart, she just tries so hard.
Oh, I do not. I do not. I do not.
But the other fallacy about Margaret is that somehow she writes these wholesome books that are suitable for everybody to read, and somehow the rest of us have these sort of slightly dirty books, a little smutty. They kind of meander into corners. It's all about me. So I thought, well, okay, I'm just going to flip through Margaret's books and see what I come up with, see what I can find. And I started thinking, oh, well, isn't that interesting? She's not going to go there. She did go there. I thought, well, in the spirit of education, I just thought that I would collect some excerpts from Margaret's book and read them out today. Of course I'll take you, I said. Thanks, honey. I do appreciate it. Ooh, good hands. That's good.
This is totally out of context.
Get ready. I was a third of the way there before Dwight got his bearings and headed after me. My form's better, but he's got a stronger stroke and stronger kick, and he finished up at least 3 strokes ahead of me.
They were swimming. They were swimming.
Has it ever been more than a minute? I asked. The silence grew awkward. Bad as that, huh? Does it mean the honeymoon's over? Is something bothering you, I asked. No, why? I don't know. You look uptight about something. To know is not to love. Familiarity sure does breed contempt, he agreed. Poor little guy's not getting the attention he's used to. If
I think we were talking about a dog then.
Sure, Margaret.
Yeah, Margaret. If I sit for too long, my mind keeps going over and over all the things I might have done different. We were supposed to go all the way. Oh, well, what can I do for you? This, I said, and reached. He snorted and batted my hand away. You try that, and I'll write you up myself. Looks like you got more work than you can handle anyhow. I know, said Dwight, and I'm sorry you've been left hanging, ma'am. It's still early, and I'm not in a hurry anymore, I said. I even took notes, I added demurely. Heck, I'll even let you drive. I heard frustration in his voice. Can we get something to eat first? As we ate, Dwight glanced at his watch. Deborah, you ready yet? The instant our hands touched, it was as if every hormone that had been quiescent these last 3 days flared into action. As if one mind, we left our sandwiches on our plates and pushed back from the table. Somehow we made from the kitchen to the couch, but just barely. He unzipped my sweater while I struggled with his belt buckle. It seemed to take forever. I wiggled my bare toes at Dwight. It's called hot, 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 I told him. What do you think? No corns or calluses, and the toenails are clean. Trimmed, too. He patted the couch beside him. Come on over here and let me show you. We decided to do it here, and here I thought you were from the high-class side of the family. Don't make any snap calls until you meet the rest of them. I promise I'll keep it at 3 miles above the speed limit all the way. Really? Really? Wow, that means you'll be in my driveway any minute now. Oh, Dwight, what's happening? Whoa, he said, slow down, Shug. Let's wait and see how this plays out first. There may be something going on we don't know about. I'll probably be sore tomorrow from all the work we did today. Oh, dear Lord, in the morning. It felt wonderful. He looked down with a rueful smile. Got more than you bargained for, didn't you, Shug? It was fine, I said. Only fine? Actually, it was better than fine. He probably learned a lot while he was in the Army. I can't believe we've had this whole weekend without somebody finding another body part. Want to stay over tonight? He laughed. Of course I'll stay if you want me. The rest of my words were muffled against Dwight's chest. How about you and me get married? Is it okay if I take a shower first? I feel dirty. I had a lot of fun reading your books for those, Margaret.
I can tell. That was totally out of context. Everything that she strung together. I didn't recognize some of those phrases.
Did anybody recognize where some of those came from?
Yeah.
Especially the body parts and the toenails all over the road. Well, that was roasting your grandmother. Now I'm going to talk about how much we love her.
Right.
I think that the most wonderful thing about Margaret is that I think that Margaret had a calling, and I think that Margaret answered it, and there are really not a lot of people in this world that can say that. And I think that Margaret's calling was to capture forever for the world this wonderful time and place in North Carolina. Not just the land, I'm going to cry. Not just the land, but the people, and not just the present and the way it is now, but also the past and the way the people in that time and place were tied to the past and how it shaped their character and how it shaped their relationships and how it shaped their worldview. And as somebody who loves North Carolina, I think she really, truly, better than anyone I've ever read, got to the heart of what it is to be in North Carolina and from North Carolina. So for that, more than anything, I say we raise a toast to Margaret Maron.
I've known Katie forever, it seems like. I don't know if you all are familiar with the fact that she is the daughter of Guy Munger. I'm losing nouns. Guy Munger was the book editor for the News and Observer for many, many years, and she is one of many children from that union. Can I tell the story? Oh, I'm going to tell it anyhow. It's this. It used to just drive Katie up the wall. I mean, she was writing these well-received mystery novels, and her dad came to one of the readings and said, when it was time for questions, her dad raised his hand, and before anybody could stop him, he said,
"When are you going to write a real book?" My poor father literally on his deathbed apologized for that comment. I said, "Dad, really, it's okay."
Oh boy, this is such a great group to go away with. We all write different things. I mean, Bryn and Katie and I write mysteries pretty much, although they've been known to write other things too. Diane writes women's fictions, which usually have a problem. She's just written a wonderful new book. What is the name of the new book?
Stealing Tomorrow. It won't be out for a year.
Well, but when it comes out, it has to do. Can I tell them what it has to do with? Okay, I just read it, and it has to do with North Carolina's eugenics program when they were sterilizing women who either had already had 2 illegitimate children or else were feeble-minded, as they called it in those days. It's set in around 1960. And she did indeed come out and roam the fields and the tobacco barns. Somebody here was talking about Ann Stevenson, and Ann Stevenson was the one who really answered a lot of the questions. And when I read it, I had to tell Diane there was nothing that made me flinch. And I am very, very protective of North Carolina and to get the farm right and not to condescend to the people who lived on the farm. And she got it right. Bryn writes wonderful short stories. She's very much a vinyl record junkie. Yes, that's a good word for it. And she set a couple of mysteries in the vinyl record business, and they're very interesting. And Katie, I can't keep up with the different persona and the different. How many series have you got going now? 3?
3 series.
Tell them what they are.
I have an older series, Hubbard and Lil. That's like a cozy. I have the Casey Jones series, which is set in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area under Katie Munger. And then what I'm really working on now, it's the Angel series. It's about a dead detective who's died and can't move on until he undoes the mistakes and wrongs he made when he was alive. And I'm now writing that one under my real name, Katie Munger.
And the middle one, the Casey
Jones?
The Casey Jones. Now, if you thought that was raunchy, come on. And Mary Kay Andrews, who's also Kathy Trocheck, and now writing under the name of Mary Kay Andrews. And she started out as a mystery writer, and they are going to bring back her mysteries that are out of print. But she also writes women's fiction, a lot lighter than Diane's. And our 7th member is Alexandra Sokoloff, and she writes horror. And so we're all these different writers.
Sarah Shaver?
How could I forget Sarah? She and I have the same agent. Sarah Shaver's mysteries have been set in Raleigh, and now she's writing one that's set in the 40s, in which she takes a young widow from eastern North Carolina and takes her up to Washington and puts her in what eventually became the CIA, but was the OSS at that time, writing sort of spy stories. So we're all writing different things. And yet, when we go to Weymouth and we have our critique sessions and our brainstorming sessions, it's so wonderful. I mean, I can say, I've got this problem. I have painted myself into a corner with this book, and Bryn got me out of that corner without tracking paint all over the floor. When we give each other advice, we don't always take the advice. But in knowing what we don't want, sometimes that clarifies what it is that we do want. And that's where the brainstorming, and these women have been so generous and so helpful. And we have fun.
I must also add that our first away together, our first retreat together, I had to really talk Margaret into it. She was very much not for this idea.
Absolutely.
I write alone. I don't show my stuff to anybody except Joe.
Yeah.
I can't do that kind of thing. I said, well, let's just try it. Let's just go away and see. We'll stay out of one another's hair. Well, I don't know. So she went very unwillingly, and we went to Holden Beach. I think there were only 4 of us on that trip. Mm-hmm. And Mary Kay was there, Kathy Trocheck was there at the first one, and took over the reins immediately. These are the rules. You will not disturb anyone when they're writing, and we all go to our corners and write in solitude. But then when we come back together, it's like, you know, as Margaret said, paint yourself into a corner, or I can't figure out how to get this body from point A to point B, or I can't figure out, you know, who the murderer is, or whatever is going on with the book. So she has gone from being very reluctant to being the queen of our...
Or certainly enthusiastic, yes. Listen, I never said I knew everything. I can be persuaded.
You were persuaded.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, so would you all like to now stand up and toast Margaret or roast her? Would anybody like to go first with, and also questions? I think now this is the time people can ask questions.
And if you have a question, please come up here so we can hear you and use the mic. Okay? Use the mic.
No, they're all too shy.
Oh, come on, somebody's going to stand up first. Somebody I know.
Ask a question, and I'll repeat it. You don't have to come up here.
That's good.
If anybody has a question? Yes.
I just want to know how it really felt, if you could remember, how it was to hold your very first published book.
Oh, how did it feel to hold my very first published book? Well, my very first published stuff was in magazines, short stories, and that felt wonderful. The first book, I'm not going to say it was as good as holding my first child, but and my only child. But it was pretty darn close. It was pretty What?
Didn't poop on you.
He said, well, the book didn't poop on me. Or drool either. It really is a wonderful thing to hold something and to know that somebody, and what is really even more delightful is to be riding in the subway or on an airplane or a bus and see somebody reading your book. I mean, that just really blows your mind. Don't you think? Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Another question? Well, we'll all just go back and drink then.
No.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay.
Well, this isn't a question, it's a comment, but I was part of a group discussion about Margaret's books, and one of the things that came out was that there were at least 2 actual people mentioned who, when they were newcomers to North Carolina, what they did was start at the beginning and read the Margaret Maron books, and then they were targeted.
Oh, excellent. Well, I had a question for Margaret because Margaret started off writing about a protagonist in New York City. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to know if it felt different inside when you finally started writing about North Carolina.
Oh, absolutely. absolutely. To bring the writing home, and to not feel like I had to really research. I mean, even though I took my character to different places, and even though I'm not a judge and didn't go to law school, it still just felt like I was writing out of my own life in a way. Even though I say that, Deborah's not me and she's not, still her experiences were my experiences, which was not the case with the New York homicide detective. They say, write what you know. I've never killed anybody, trust me. Yes.
Have each of you told what your favorite fan comment is? Do you have a favorite fan comment, and what is it?
The question is, do we each have a favorite fan comment that somebody has written or told us? And if so, what is it?
I guess the other day, I have a very busy life, so I sometimes just can't pay attention to what's going on, with a book that came out and went on for months. So I stumbled on a review of, I think it was Angel, what's the name of my last book? Anybody remember? Angel of Darkness. And some person I don't know from California wrote a really amazing review on Amazon. And what was amazing about it was that he got it. He said that this book was about good and evil. And all the other stuff surrounding it, it really just got back to good and evil. And it was such a great review to find a stranger and stumble across it, and to remind myself that I did have this thing I really wanted to say, and that somebody out there unrelated to me saw it, read it, got it. And I think that's going to keep me going for a while.
Well, I wrote a series for Guidepost Books. I wrote 5 Mysteries of Sparrow Island books for them. And my first book for them was book number 2 in their series. And I introduced a service dog. And they didn't like the service dog. The publishers didn't want they thought it was too much bother to try to work the dog. I really fought for this dog. I wanted this dog in that book, so I really fought for it. And about a year after the book came out, I got this letter from this woman who had had a service dog for 9 years that had just died. And she talked about how much that dog meant to her throughout that series of books. And so that made me feel really, really good, that she felt like it was almost a memorial to her dog to have it included. So.
I think the most amazing thing about writing is realizing that you're touching people that you don't even know. And years ago, my book started being published in Japan, and this is the one line from a reader that has always stayed in my mind. It was a Japanese reader, and she emailed me and she said, "You make me believe the life is beautiful even if it is full of pain and rage." Wow. And I had the same feeling Katie just had of somebody got it, somebody besides me got it. And it's just a remarkable feeling. It's a great question.
It is, and that's happened with me. I've had people say, my dad was dying, and we were doing a death watch, and we all had your book, and we were all reading it at the same time, and it got us through my father's death. I mean, to get books like that, get remarks like that, you are just so blessed to be able to be part of that. It is an amazing thing. Yeah.
I actually, my series, the Casey Jones series, is supposed to be funny, supposed to be. So some people look at it as frivolous, and I did once get a email from a nurse in Michigan who said, "I use your books for women that are undergoing treatment for breast cancer," because she was using humor as a treatment. It's supposed to hasten your healing. And she said, "And your books are the first things I give people when they're undergoing chemotherapy," and that meant a lot to me because I felt like the books were worth more than people were saying.
Okay. I'm leery of this one, but go ahead.
Seeing as how it's a roast, I thought you might like to share some of your comments that were the most frustrating.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah, you want to start?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Other than your dad's comment?
Should I tell you, other than my father's comment? Oh, I forgave him for that. That comment was really, "Honey, I wish I could have written a book in my lifetime, but it went by so fast I never got the chance." That's what his comment really meant. As female writers, we get I think sometimes I would get emails from male writers who, for whatever reason, had a bug up their about, you got published and they didn't, or your book sold more there and they didn't. And it was, people love to write you and point out the mistakes in your books.
Oh, yeah.
And so his beef was that where I had set a farm in the panhandle of Florida wasn't actually an hour and a half out of Tampa, it was 2 hours out of Tampa or something like that. And I could have written back and said, I drive fast. But what really annoys him, if you write him back and pretend to be your own secretary and you say, Miss Munger appreciates how much you adore and love her series, but she's too busy to answer every email. Thank you for writing. And that just really enrages him.
I think my biggest irritant was I got a email from a male once who was telling me I had featured a painting in one of the guidepost books of an angel depicted as a female. And he instructed me he was correcting me and trying to save my mortal soul to let me know that angels are not female. They're always depicted as males. Huh. I'm like, well, we're starting something new.
And you never saw angels in America, apparently.
I don't know. There's so many to choose from. I think the thing that was most irritating to me was I have a P.O. box for my readers, and I got a big envelope, and this reader had made copies of every page of my book in which the character used bad grammar, because she wanted to point out to me how, in each instance, how the grammar was wrong. And she had no return address. And that is the frustrating thing, is that you just are dying to say, these are characters. This is how they talk.
Yeah.
Wow.
But there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, one of my editors got that letter about, it's clear that Margaret Maron does not know grammar and punctuation, but as an editor, surely you do. And don't editors edit anymore? So I wrote her back. So the editor passed the letter on to me and said, do you want to respond to this or not? And of course I did. And
Bless her heart.
yeah, bless her. So I wound up writing a letter back to her that eventually became an article for the Writer magazine called I Is Not Me. And when somebody is speaking in the I voice, that's not necessarily Margaret Maron speaking, this is his character speaking. And this character might use double negatives and everything. And I said, after all, I have a perfectly logical reason for doing this and a good example. And then I quoted the foreword of a book in which the author said, the dialects and the usages in this book are totally accurate. I have painstakingly researched them. And he went on and on about how he had researched these dialects. And I said, had he written his book in this pedantic manner as in this foreword, the book would never be remembered. Mm-hmm. But he didn't. He started his book, you don't know nothing about me unless you've read a book called Tom Sawyer. And this was Huckleberry Finn, of course. And because it was written in Huckleberry Finn's idiosyncratic language and grammar and everything, the book is still living and breathing. So I is not me.
I like that. I like that.
Yes. Uh-oh.
Such a long time writer from crime writers' days, which invited those of us who crime readers are not actually aspiring writers, but
Oh, come on up, Jan. I have a feeling this is going to be a little bit longer than a quick question. Jan Hessling is you restore paintings.
I do.
She's curatorial, yes. And we've known her since Carolina Crime Writers, which was a long time ago.
And you first invited me to come to a crime writers meeting after you were speaking at the library, at the Durham County Library, so it's a big circle.
A big circle.
I've been catching up with the books, and I've been reading like one a week since Durham Reads Together starts, and I'm catching up, and they're crossing back and forth because I have to take what's available on the shelf because mostly they're gone. But it's been so much fun getting into the characters, and it's really like another family that you get to know. And a crime happens, but most of the action is about Deborah and her family and her friends and the community. And you capture that so much, and I hear your voice reading, the lingo. But the dialogue and everything is so great, and it's so, having lived here for a long time, another transplant from Illinois, but, you hear these expressions, and you hear the tone of voice and the way people say things, and bless your heart, good, you learn how to use that, and you do have it made. So it's just been fun reading them along and enjoying the people and the setting, and it's so nice to enjoy the book where people from the South are like educated and smart people, and they may have a colorful way of saying it, but that doesn't mean they're a bunch of stupid rubes, which the modern media would have everybody believe. So keep it up.
Yes.
Thank you.
So can we talk about how hungry you get reading Margaret's books? As I was paging through them to get the excerpts, I kept hitting these fabulous descriptions of the meals and the cornbread made in the pan with butter, and it was
The
just
chicken
killing
pastry.
me. Oh, and the rich pork gravy, it was just killing me.
I have a question for you, Margaret.
Yeah.
All of your books are either have a setting or a soapbox, one or the other, sometimes both. I was wondering which of the topics, the campaigns, the causes has been the most resonant for you?
Oh, that is a good question, Brent. And of course, when someone's asked a question and she says, boy, that's a good question, she's frantically trying to think.
Well, you think for a minute, and by soapbox she means like illegal immigration maybe, would be something she was exploring. Battered women, yeah.
Yeah. Different things like that.
Development. I know development.
Probably development is the thing. It's not that I feel like that I should have slammed the door shut behind me when we came back to North Carolina, although I really wouldn't have minded that a little bit. I was not prepared to have all the farms, so many of the farms go under the surveyor's ribbons. That's been really hard to see, and especially over in Johnston County, which we are a bedroom for Raleigh. And which means that a lot of the people who live there and send their children to school there actually spend their money in Wake County. And we would like them to, if they're going to live there, to leave a little bit more of their money in Johnston County. Well, of course, now we're getting the big grocery stores and the Walmarts and everything, and so we are. I actually sent Deborah to one of the county commissioner meetings because it just, I don't know, it really got up my nose, as the British will say. We had an industrial, a business type developer who said that when she was out in one of the conferences out in Las Vegas or someplace, and she said, I do development in North Carolina, and they were interested. She said, but then when I said I do development in Johnston County, now of course we're talking 5 or 6 years ago, when I say that I'm Johnston County, they want to give me their cards, and they want my card, and they want to talk about it. And she said, now what you commissioners need to understand is that when we do our flyover, we don't care what kind of rooftops. We count rooftops, and we don't care whether these are high-end rooftops or low-end rooftops. We count rooftops, and that's where we put our Walmarts and our Kmarts and our Big Lots and our grocery stores. And I thought, I'm nothing but a rooftop. And, this is what they're doing. They just want lots of rooftops so that they can bring in these big box chain stores. And yeah, that bothers me a little bit. You can tell. We've got 2 Johnston County people sitting back there who know what I'm talking about. Yes. 2 of my book club people. Yes.
Well, I'd like to know where this expression, I think I heard it from you, means, and it's too many Johnston County boys in the same room. What does that mean?
Ann, you want to handle that? We did, but I can remember when I was much younger, and you would have business people say that they liked to hire people from Johnston County because, especially the women, that they knew how to work. And we did. We gave good 8 hours of work for 8 hours of pay. But I don't know about a room full of Johnston County boys. I've never heard that expression.
I have a mail writer friend who talks about being irked when people cut in line or something, you know, with him in traffic, and he says, I have to really hold myself back from going all Johnston County on him. So, you know, I think there must be a little...
Yeah, there is a little of that. Little broad slab in everybody. Yeah.
One of the things I really like about Margaret's books are her descriptions of the women in them and her descriptions of the Johnston County women, the women who have worked the farm or had manual labor in their lives. It's not that you sugarcoat them, but the way she describes their wrinkles or their large stature or their worn hands, there's just sort of such admiration and strength and respect in the way that you describe them. And it's never the same. You know, you can get a writer that does a lot of books and they kind of have a go-to description about people, and you've never done that I can see.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I think we're finished, aren't we? Oh, no, there's one more question here. Yes.
Of the social issues that you covered, which one do you think has had the most impact?
You know, I don't think anybody, well, I do get some comments about, there are, how can I say this gracefully, elegantly? People who sit in the other choir get really annoyed if I say anything ugly about Ronald Reagan. And I hear about it, and they give me a really hard time. But actually, I guess that's the main thing. And the reason I did, because I have talked with district court judges who are so unhappy with our lack of mental health facilities. Do you realize how many of our prisoners are in prison because they have mental problems, and not because they've actually done anything that bad, but they're acting out because of their mental health? And when Mr. Reagan changed the health program and said, we're going to close these institutions and we're going to give mental health patients all their civil rights, and we're going to send them back to the states and let the states handle it. But they didn't send any money when they sent all the patients back. And so you have a lot of these really bad people. I mean, they're not bad, but they're acting out because of the way their brain works. And I feel so badly about that. And the judges are just heartbroken. They said, what can we do? You know, we've got no place. We can send them for a mental health evaluation and everything, but there's nothing there for them beyond that. There's no place to put them. There's no place for them to get the help. Just a very tiny percentage of mental health patients' needs are being met in this state. And it's very frustrating for district court judges.
How many people love the parts in Margaret's books where you're in Deborah Knott's head and she's going through her Friday calendar, which is the mismatch of, and she actually manages to be able to dispense justice within the parameters of the law, even though she has to bend it a little sometimes. I just love those passages. I'm like living Walter Mitty style through her, bringing justice.
Yeah.
Margaret, you are Deborah, or is Deborah you? And Casey Jones' books, I mean, I could see you as Casey or Casey. So which came first?
Okay, the question is, which came first, Casey or my friend here, or which, you know, is Deborah me? Am I Deborah? Obviously, I will answer first on this one. Obviously, I partake of a lot of Deborah's personality, I probably, and her desire for justice, and her desire to do good, even though she doesn't always do as good as she thinks she ought to. Yeah, those parts are me, and I'll admit that. But she's smarter than I am, and she's prettier than I am, and she's certainly younger than I am, and she's got a law degree, which I don't have. But I don't know.
Well, I wish that I was as physically strong as Casey and as physically confident as her, but she's actually based on a friend of mine from New Orleans, which explains everything about her. If you all know anybody from New Orleans, they get long leashes there to be whoever they are, who was literally given away as a child to her neighbor. Her mother didn't want her. And the neighbor said, Penny, if you can't take care of that child, you should give it away to somebody who can. And her mother went, well, fine, you take her. And the neighbor did take her. And despite that beginning in life, this friend of mine is so full of life and the love of life. And she just meets every day head on. And I admire her so much for that. And that's really who I base Casey on. She came from a very poor white trash background, and she didn't let that stop her.
Next, one quick one. Did you decide when you were going to write a story about a judge that you wanted it to be Judge Not, and then all of that, the Not family came after? Or did you have this family in your head and then you thought, you know what, the perfect name to do this?
Okay, the question is, how did I really come up with Deborah Knott? How did I come up with the family, the name, the whole 9 yards? Everybody thinks of Deborah as a positive. She's actually a negative. I had my New York character was a loner, so I gave Deborah a family. My New York character was not comfortable in her skin, so I made Deborah overly confident in her skin. Everything that Sigrid Harrell is, Deborah is not. And then I got the name of, from the Bible, and Deborah judged Israel at that time. And I thought, wouldn't that be a hoot if when she starts running for judge, that every time she goes to church, the minister would base his sermon on that particular verse. She would get awfully tired of that real quick. And I gave her the name Not because I thought at the time that I would do titles that would be puns, like Judge Not. And not as a judge, and not this and not that. And then I decided that was rather dumb. But by that time, I had already published the first short story, and she was already named. Sarah Paretsky asked me to do a short story, and that was her first incarnation. And so I was stuck with the name at that point. But I did veer away from doing any puns on the name. Although there is one time when somebody says, my name is so-and-so, and she reaches across the table and says, Judge Not. And the woman gets very indignant and says, what makes you think I would? Okay. Oh, yeah, one more question back here.
Two more, actually.
Oh. The question is, in one of the books, and I forget exactly which one it was, but a little girl burns her hand at a pig picking, and one of Deborah's aunts talks the fire out of the hand. And this is something that is, a lot of Southerners do this. I mean, have any of you all are familiar with fire talking, right?
It's Reiki. It's the same thing as Reiki is now with the New Agers.
Is it? Mm-hmm. But my mother worked in a factory with a soldering iron, and she picked up the wrong end of a soldering iron one day, and it just went right into the flesh, and she was in very much pain. And her coworker grabbed her and pulled her across the factory floor to a woman who took my mother's hand in hers and started whispering. And Mother said the fire just totally went out of her hand. She did not get a blister, nothing. And that made such an impression on me. And I've heard of fire talkers since then. You never heard of that? Oh, yeah.
There's a question there.
There's one here.
I know you got one more book coming out. How long have you read the book? You plan to write a lot more books?
I have no idea, but I am signing a contract for 2 more. There will not be a book next year. I'm taking some time off. Having written a book a year for the last 25 years, I'm ready to take a little break. But there will be a book in November, and then the next book will come out year after next. So.
Margaret will, when we're at Weymouth, she'll say, I'm done. I'm not writing anymore. And then the next day she gets up and starts telling us the plot of her next story.
Well, let's give our panel a hand, and thank you all so much for being here. I did want to say one thing when Katie mentioned about the food. We did, one of our panels, some of you might have been here, was on Southern cooking. And Ben Barker, formerly of Magnolia Grill, said that when he was reading one of her books and he came to the part about making cornbread, he had to stop reading and get up and make cornbread. Now, I consider that almost an Academy Award, you know?
Yeah, that's
For
right.
him,
So
yeah.
please, we have plenty of food in the back. The authors will be back there signing their books, and have a drink and let's have a good time. Thank you all for coming.
Hey, Joanne, can I put a plug in for something that's happening? The Regulator on November 14th, I'm going to lead the Blast from the Past discussion on Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And we're asking especially the men of Durham to come and join the women. And we're asking people to choose their favorite secondary character, not Lizzie or Mr. Darcy, their favorite secondary character, the one that they most feel a kinship with, and to come prepared to talk about it. It'd be great if you could join us. Didn't mean to interrupt the applause for Margaret.